Okay, let's look at example 3, same directions. We're going to graph two periods of each function. All right, and so we're going to start by looking at the function y equals -1 cosecant of 2x minus 3 pi over 2 minus 1. Okay, we're going to start by graphing the sign of this function. So same thing as we were doing, right? We have to factor a 2 out. And when I factor a 2 out, that's like dividing by 2. When I divide fractions, I take the numerator and I multiply by the reciprocal of the denominator. Okay, so this is going to be 3 pi over 4. Okay, so here's my A, here's my B, here's H, and here's K, right? So that means that this function is moving down 1 and to the right 3 pi over 4. Okay, it's got a phase shift of 3 pi over 4. So we have a lot going on here. Okay, but we're going to start by graphing the sign of this function first. Okay, and then we will fill in the cosecant based on that. Okay, so the amplitude of the sine function, right, is 1. Cosecant doesn't have an amplitude, but the amplitude of the sine function is 1. The period is 2 pi over b, okay, which is pi. All right, I have a phase shift here, which means I am starting at, instead of starting at 0, I'm moving to the right 3 pi over 4 units. I'm starting at 3 pi over 4. And instead of ending at pi, I'm shifting that to the right 3 pi over 4. So I would add 3 pi over 4 here. Okay, so that's 4 pi over 4 plus 3 pi over 4. That is 7 pi over 4. So I'm starting at 3 pi over 4 for this first period, and I'm ending at 7 pi over 4. Okay, so that means this first period, starting at 3 pi over 4, and it is going to end at 7 pi over 4. Okay, so before I draw my vertical axis, I'm going to figure out my critical points here. Okay, so I'm starting at 3 pi over 4. My period is pi, okay, which means that the distance between the critical points, right, is going to be my period divided by 4, so it's pi over 4. All right, so when I'm figuring out these critical points, I'm adding pi over 4. Oops, that's not 5 pi over 4. That is 4 pi over 4. Okay, so that's pi. Okay, I'm going to now add pi over 4 to pi, and pi is the same thing as 4 pi over 4. Okay, now I have 5 pi over 4. Okay, so now I'm going to add 5 pi over 4 plus pi over 4. Wait, that's 6 pi over 4, which is 3 pi over 2. Okay, and then just to double check that I'm on the right track, I'm going to do 3 pi over 4 plus pi over 4, but I'm going to write 3 pi over 4 as, or 3 pi over 2 as 6 pi over 4. And I'm going to add pi over 4 to that, and I get 7 pi over 4. Okay, so I'm doing good here. Now I need to go in the other direction, right? So I would say 3 pi over 4 minus pi over 4 because I'm moving left. Okay, that is 2 pi over 4, which is pi over 2. Okay, and I'm not going to sit here and do the rest of these just for the sake of time. Okay, if I were to subtract pi over 4 from pi over 2, I get pi over 4. Okay, if I were to subtract pi over 4 minus pi over 4, I get 0. And then 0 minus pi over 4 is negative pi over 4. Okay, so here's where my vertical axis goes. And that's why I waited to find my critical points to put that vertical axis in there. All right, so there's all my critical points. I have a vertical shift of -1, which means that midline, right, I'm going to draw this in green, moves from the x-axis down to -1. Okay, so I'm going to start by graphing the sine function. I said my start was 3 pi over 4. Right, so I'm going to start at that point. Okay, last thing I need to take into consideration is this negative. That means that I am, that's a reflection across the x-axis, right? So instead of going up to the max, I'm going down to the min. My amplitude is 1, so I'm going down 1 unit below the midline, back to the midline, up 1 unit above the midline, okay, back to the midline. And the same thing over here, down 1 unit, midline, up 1 unit, midline. Okay, so here is, okay, wait, what did I do wrong here? So we started here. So here's that first period. Okay, so this one should have gone up, midline, down, midline. Okay, so there is my sine function. Okay, remember that everywhere sine touches the midline, I've got an asymptote. Okay, everywhere it touches the midline, I've got an asymptote. So here are all my asymptotes. Okay, and now I can graph the cosecant function. Okay, so I have a point here, a point here, point here, and a point here. Okay, and that is my function. So I'm going to end this video. I'm going to do one more example similar to this one. You can watch it if you want to see another example. You don't have to, but I know that that example won't fit in this video. So I'm going to stop it here and do part B in another video.